Hello there. We had two different types of weather across the UK on Sunday. Many areas stayed quite cloudy, and with the cloud came the threat of showers or some lengthier outbreaks of rain, like here in Cornwall. But it wasn't like that everywhere. Across the north of Wales, parts of northern England, across the Midlands and East Anglia, well, there was extensive sunshine. A beautiful satellite picture. Curl a cloud down towards the southwest, an area of low pressure throwing up a band of rain and showers in from the southwest. Stayed cloudy for Scotland, Northern Ireland, the far north of England. In the cloud, temperatures reached 12 degrees for some in the southwest, but contrast that with the warm sunshine. Parts of East Anglia, Suffolk saw a top temperature of 20. And I suppose Bank Holiday Monday is going to be a similar kind of day, chasing around those different areas of cloud. Many areas, though, will keep a lot of cloud. And I suppose one big difference is as we go through Monday afternoon, Bank Holiday, of course, showers are going to develop. They're going to be much more widespread, and they're going to tend to be heavier. So there's a greater risk of seeing some thunderstorms develop. Probably the best of the sunshine across parts of northern England, Wales, the Midlands, and perhaps into Norfolk as well. There could be longer outbreaks of rain working into southeast England, and the rain could be slow to clear here through Monday night as well. It will be a relatively mild night where we keep the cloud, temperatures around 8 to 10 degrees Celsius heading into Tuesday. Now we'll begin to see a change in our weather patterns from Tuesday as an area of high pressure starts to move in from the west. Now, it's not the strongest area of high pressure, and on Tuesday there will still be areas of cloud around, still the threat of a few afternoon showers across western areas, but they won't be as heavy, they won't be as extensive. Many areas will stay dry with some bright or sunny spells breaking through the cloud. There's a trend for the weather to get a little bit warmer across England and Wales through Tuesday. More of us seeing temperatures into the high teens to low 20s, but where the cloud sticks, temperatures probably about 12 to 14 degrees. The high pressure builds in a bit more on Wednesday, but it's not strong enough to keep this weather system at bay. And so, across Scotland, through Wednesday, we'll see the cloud thicken up with outbreaks of rain arriving initially across the Hebrides before spreading into the Highlands, Orkney and Shetland late in the day with strengthening southwesterly winds. Now, away from that, for Northern Ireland, England and Wales, it's a predominantly fine day. There'll be some areas of high cloud in the sky, so sunshine is likely to be hazy, but it will be quite pleasant in that sunshine. Temperatures 17 to 20 degrees quite widely. For Thursday, the dregs of the weather system in Scotland will continue to feed on a few showers here, but overall it's a brighter kind of day. For Northern Ireland, England and Wales, again it should be dry with some lengthy spells of hazy sunshine. It's getting warmer, 18 degrees in Belfast and 19 for Newcastle. But quite widely, central and eastern England sees those temperatures run into the low 20s, which will feel pleasantly warm. Friday, well, we get another weak weather system moving into Scotland, threatening further outbreaks of rain. And that system could also bring a few showers into northern England. Away from that, further southwards, for much of Wales, Midlands, East Anglia, southern England and Northern Ireland, it should be a dry day with sunny spells. Now, beyond that, high pressure is going to rebuild to the north of the UK. And for the following weekend, should be largely dry, sunny and pretty warm, with temperatures climbing widely into the upper teens to low 20s. So loads of showers to start the week, but there's a trend for the weather to become more settled and quite a bit warmer as well.
I want Hip Life to be that good story that lifted black folks in Africa and all over the world, gave young people a voice.
It's part of being an actor, because I always say as an actor you can't be a control freak. You have to be willing to give up control.
So I like this idea of a live piece of art. And I just like this idea of making invisible visible through art.
Sometimes you can have really serious portraits, but you've got such a great laugh. I feel like I want to capture some of the candid nature of your personality.
Opera House can and must be many things. It shouldn't cater just to one audience, and it shouldn't be focused on just one corner of the repertoire. It must do everything and be open to the interests of many different people.
Inspiring arts and culture. Watch now on iPlayer.
Live from London, this is BBC News. The Chinese President Xi Jinping arrives in France on the first leg of his European tour. It's his first visit to the continent in 5 years. Israel has launched airstrikes on Rafah in southern Gaza after a Hamas attack from the area killed 3 soldiers. John Swinney is expected to be confirmed as the new leader of the Scottish National Party later, after a potential challenger pulled out of the race. And the wait is almost over for the world's largest television event, as this year's Eurovision contestants shine in style, and Malmo aiming to put on a spectacular opening. Hello, I'm Tadhg Enright and you're welcome to BBC News. China's President Xi Jinping is in France on his first state visit to Europe in 5 years, with the war in Ukraine and trade with the EU expected to dominate the agenda. President Xi will hold talks with French President Emmanuel Macron and the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in Paris on Monday. In an article for the French newspaper Le Figaro, Xi said he intended to work with France and the entire international community to uphold world peace and stability. Well, on the war in Ukraine, he wrote, China understands the repercussions of the crisis on the people of Europe, but China did not start the Ukraine crisis, nor is it a party to or participant in it. Nonetheless, China has been playing a constructive role in striving for peaceful settlement of the crisis. Well, that's despite US claims that China is providing vital war material to Russia. President Macron is expected to warn President Xi against backing Russia in the conflict. Let's speak now to Jonathan Cheng, who is the China bureau chief for the Wall Street Journal. Thanks for joining us today, Jonathan. Let's talk about the wider diplomacy first. President Xi has been on somewhat of a diplomatic blitz recently, although usually receiving visitors rather than going abroad. How significant do you think this trip is?
Well, I think it's pretty important because, as you point out, he rarely does leave China these days. Certainly during COVID, he didn't, and this is one of his few trips outside. And I think it's significant because I think in Beijing, they still see Europe as potentially winnable, if you want to call it that. The US, the UK, and the other Five Eyes countries are perhaps beyond their grasp right now, but they do see an opportunity in Europe, and I think that's why you're seeing this 3-country trip.
And should we read into that it's these 3 countries with whom President Xi sees the greatest opportunities?
Well, France, of course, is an important country in Europe, perhaps, along with Germany, the most important. But Hungary is as I think many people know, a bit of an outlier within the EU, and it's one that is considered perhaps most friendly to China. So I think that explains why Hungary is on the itinerary. And then we're going to get a curious stopover in Belgrade, the Serbian capital, and it looks like it will happen on the 25th anniversary of when NATO bombed the Chinese embassy there in 1999, supposedly by accident, but that's an explanation that China has not really accepted, and it's an incident that they keep talking about, and especially with NATO very much at the forefront of the Ukraine situation, I think you're going to hear Xi Jinping say something about that there.
Well, indeed. Looking at that statement that we read out a few moments ago from President Xi about Ukraine, the summary being, we didn't start it and have nothing to do with it. Clearly, many Europeans, the US, see it otherwise, and there will be words exchanged about China's support for Russia. Does China have any kind of a listening ear, do you think, to comments like that?
Well, I think they've been listening for the past 2 years. I don't think that we've seen them shift their message too much, and I don't think we should expect to see any real change. I mean, that article in the French press that you mentioned from Xi Jinping already lays out, I think, what we're going to hear from them. And again, it's consistent with everything that we've heard so far. Obviously, the ties between Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin are close. These are 2 neighboring countries, both on the UN Security Council as permanent members. They have a lot of history together, and I don't know that we're going to see any meaningful shift simply because Macron says that, this really matters to us. They've been saying that for 2 years and hasn't really moved any thinking here in Beijing.
Okay, Jonathan Cheng, China Bureau Chief for the Wall Street Journal. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Rob.
Now, Israel's military says that 3 soldiers were killed and several injured after Hamas fired rockets from an area in southern Gaza close to the Rafah crossing. Israel responded by closing the Kerem Shalom border point, one of the few points to get aid into the territory. Well, the surge in violence follows the conclusion of peace talks in Cairo with no progress on a ceasefire agreement made. It comes as the Israeli government forced the news network Al Jazeera to shut down its operations in Israel, calling it a mouthpiece for Hamas. Frank Gardner reports from Jerusalem.
In a country that prides itself on free speech and democracy, Israeli police shut down the offices of Al Jazeera today, seizing its broadcast equipment.
If you're watching this pre-recorded report, then Al Jazeera has been banned in the territory of Israel.
This was one of its final broadcasts from Jerusalem before the police arrived. The government accused the Qatar-based TV channel of incitement to terrorism, calling it a mouthpiece for Hamas. Its bureau chief called it a dangerous move.
Israel cannot claim all the time that she's a democracy, that it's democracy, and at the same time they are cutting and prevent the journalists to do their job.
Meanwhile, down on the Gaza border, close to Rafah, a deadly rocket attack by Hamas on the very crossing point through which it was hoped more aid could flow into the territory. It's since been shut. At least 3 Israeli soldiers were killed. Today, Israel's embattled Prime Minister reacted to Hamas's demands for a permanent ceasefire and an Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. The State of Israel is not willing to accept this, he said. Capitulating to Hamas's demands would be a terrible defeat for Israel. But the government here is under pressure from parts of its own population. Last night, tens of thousands of Israelis rallied in protest at delays in getting the hostages out of Gaza. They don't believe the government is making it a priority. The Israeli government wants its hostages out, but at the same time it's vowed to destroy Hamas, which is why it won't agree to a permanent ceasefire. But Hamas, which holds the hostages, says it won't sign a deal unless the ceasefire is permanent, which is why the peace talks have stalled. A delegation from Hamas has just been in Cairo talking to mediators. They've now left to consult with their leadership. In Gaza, the war continues with airstrikes and deprivation. Gazans are desperate for this war to end. So too are many Israelis. But others in Israel see this as unfinished business. They want this war pursued until Hamas is utterly destroyed. Frank Gardner, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Well, I'm joined now by Saeed Shahata from BBC Arabic for some more analysis on this situation. Let's start with the airstrikes first, Saeed. Is there a significance that the rockets were fired from an area close to Rafah? Because, of course, that's an area where we've been poised for an Israeli invasion. It puts that question back into the spotlight, doesn't it?
I think it will strengthen the position of the Israeli Prime Minister of insisting to make a ground assault on Rafah because maybe the only place it can rockets can be fired because it came from other place from Lebanon, but from within Gaza, maybe because Israel controlling northern Gaza. So this is the only place to fire rockets. Even there is some like clashes, some rockets coming, but like mainly this is a big one and killing 3 Israeli soldiers and wounded others. It makes like a threat to Israeli security, according to Mr. Netanyahu. So this gives him more insisting to do that. Even there is warning from international community because of the catastrophic humanitarian crisis will come out of that.
Sure, and he has said he is determined to do so, even if those ceasefire negotiations had actually gone somewhere. He did say it was still his intention to invade Rafah. What happened with those ceasefire negotiations? They've wrapped up, no deal was done. Is that it now, off the cards for some time ahead?
Unfortunately, the problem since the last truce in November, there is no progress. Sticking points between them, Hamas insists on permanent ceasefire, withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza, the return of displaced people from the south to their homes in the north. This is the demands of Hamas. Mr. Netanyahu said clearly that is not going to be accepting to end of the war because it will be a defeat for the state of Israel. And if they don't go to Gaza and they don't finish the war, it might give the Hamas an opportunity to rebuild its infrastructure, making a threat to Israel. Even there is Israel working on a buffer zone, so the buffer zone might help. But the main thing, I think, for many commentators and the international community, two-state solution. If there is two-state solution, there will not be excuse for Hamas to attack Israel. So achieving the security of Israel in the long run, I think, through this two-state solution.
So the politicians are doing their thing or not doing their thing as it is right now. Meanwhile, the ordinary people of Gaza continue to suffer. We saw it alluded to in Frank's report there, but also UNRWA, the UN agency there, putting out a report about health and conditions for the people of Gaza right now. What has it said?
The UNRWA warns of a sanitation crisis in Gaza. There is thousands of waste are piling up in Gaza. There is a spread of mosquitoes, flies, and rats, as well as diseases because of the increase of temperature will increase all of these kind of diseases. In addition to that, according to the World Health Organization, says only 30% of hospitals in Gaza working partially, even it's not in a full capacity. So it will add to the pressure on the people in Gaza. In addition to that, closing Kerem Shalom crossing will add to the misery of the humanitarian aid because it's one of the main routes, one of the few routes to deliver aid into Gaza.
Okay. Saeed Shahata from BBC Arabic, thank you for bringing us up to date on that. We will be talking more about the closure of Al Jazeera within Israel. That's with Omar Shakir, who's the Israel and Palestine Director at Human Rights Watch. That's coming up later in the programme. Let's have a look now at some of the day's other news. And rescue efforts are continuing in the Brazilian state of Rio Grande do Sul, where floods and landslides have left nearly 80 people dead. President Lula, who visited the state on Sunday, has blamed the disaster on climate change. Among the worst hit areas is the state capital, Porto Alegre, where residents have been forced onto rooftops. 3 bodies found in a well in Mexico's northwest all had bullet wounds to the head and have been formally identified. The 2 Australian brothers and an American were on holiday in the area near the US border when they were attacked. 3 suspects have been detained on suspicion of involvement with the attack. And the right-wing candidate in Panama's presidential election, Jose Raul Mulino, has secured victory after his closest rival conceded. Mr. Molino was only on the ballot because his party's initial candidate, the former president Ricardo Martinelli, was found guilty of money laundering. The vote comes as Panama grapples with a severe drought. And the Australian airline Qantas has agreed to pay a $66 million fine for misleading consumers by advertising seats on thousands of flights that have been cancelled. The head of the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission said the airline's conduct had been egregious and unacceptable. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Well, let's get more now on the Israeli government's move to shut down Al Jazeera's operations in Israel. The news network has condemned the decision as a criminal act aimed at concealing the truth of the war against Hamas. The Qatar-based channel has been one of the only international media outlets to cover the war from within Gaza. Well, let's speak now to Omar Shakir, who's the Israel and Palestine director at Human Rights Watch. Thanks for joining us today, Omar. First of all, what is your reaction to Israel's decision here?
Look, I think this is an assault on the freedom of the press. The reality here is Al Jazeera has been a critical source of information for decades. Its reporting on Gaza is relied upon around the world, especially in the Arab world. Instead of trying to muzzle reporting on atrocities, the Israeli government should stop committing them.
Yeah, indeed. I wonder what their claim, the Israeli government's claim, is that Al Jazeera had become a mouthpiece for Hamas. What do you say to that?
Look, I mean, they're reporting the news. News reporting can always be attacked if people don't like the substance of the information. I covered Egypt when the Egyptian government tried to muzzle Al Jazeera's reporting. This is the same sort of allegations that are used there and that governments around the world have used to muzzle critical reporting. Ultimately, respecting freedom of expression, respecting the right of audiences to receive different information is critical in any country, but the Israeli government is silencing the messenger instead of dealing with the content of the allegations.
To your knowledge, though, what kind of an audience did Al Jazeera have within Israel? How many people who previously watched it will no longer be able to watch it?
Well, look, I've already seen reports from Israeli colleagues and friends in the human rights community and otherwise who are now not able to access Al Jazeera's website. The reality is, if you want up-to-date information about the occupied Palestinian territory today, Al Jazeera is one of the few sources, given that the Israeli government has not allowed foreign journalists into Gaza for more than 6 months, for nearly 7 months, given the killing of scores of reporters. So anybody that wants the real update on Gaza is relying on Al Jazeera, especially given that Israeli media frequently isn't reporting on the realities on the ground.
Well, speaking of Israeli media, the ability to do this has come about because Israel has passed a new media law. And I wonder, would you also have concerns for the future of any Israeli-based media outlets that could be critical of the government, whether they might feel less inclined to do so?
Absolutely. I mean, look, the target here is muzzling Al Jazeera, but the law itself has dramatic implications that threatens to clamp down on critical reporting. We've seen this pattern with the Israeli government before. They create a law that restricts expression. They do a trial balloon. They go after a particularly critical source. And then if that works without pushback, they expand it. It's happened when it comes to denying entry to critical human rights advocates. It's happened when it comes to moves against Palestinian civil society organizations. We've seen the same textbook used before.
And indeed, it is worth remembering the Al Jazeera journalists and other journalists who have been killed covering the war in Gaza. Will this decision, do you think, affect in any way their ability to continue doing that?
Look, I mean, absolutely. Al Jazeera's offices have been bombed in Gaza. Their staff have been killed in Gaza and the West Bank. Their staff have been beaten in the West Bank. While this decision only applies inside Israel proper, though, of course, the raid took place in occupied East Jerusalem, the reality here is we've seen the Israeli government often, the military will take action in line in the occupied territory with action inside Israel. So it may only be a matter of time before we see corresponding action in the West Bank, in Gaza, that reflect this same policy and then ultimately prevent Jazeera from doing its reporting in those areas.
Okay, Omar Shakir from Human Rights Watch, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Now, the former Deputy First Minister of Scotland, John Swinney, is expected to be confirmed as the next leader of the Scottish National Party later today. The veteran party activist Graham McCormack pulled out of the leadership race last night and endorsed him. Mr Swinney is now the only candidate. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has acknowledged the Conservatives might not win the next UK general election. Speaking to the Times newspaper, the Prime Minister said one analysis of Thursday's local election defeats suggested the UK was on course for a hung parliament and said voters would not want to see Sir Keir Starmer propped up in Downing Street by the SNP or smaller parties. Tory critics have called on Mr Sunak to shift the party further to the right. Now, train drivers here in the UK in the ASLEF union are beginning a 6-day overtime ban, which is expected to cause widespread disruption. A series of one-day strikes are also being staged at 16 rail companies this week as part of a long-running dispute over pay. Greater Anglia said that services would be severely impacted on Tuesday. Passengers have been advised to check before travelling and plan accordingly. The cast of Lord of the Rings have paid tribute to their co-star Bernard Hill, who's died aged 79. The actor who played King Theoden in Peter Jackson's trilogy passed away early on Sunday morning. Elijah Wood, Billy Boyd, Dominic Monaghan and Sean Astin, who played the 4 hobbits in the films, said goodbye to their funny, gruff, beautiful friend. They told Comic-Con fans in Liverpool that they'd lost a family member. Now, the final of this year's Eurovision Song Contest is coming up next weekend, but contestants have already been putting on the style for the event's official opening in Malmö. As many as 100,000 visitors are set to descend on the Swedish city for the world's largest live music contest. Poppy Jeffrey reports.
In Eurovision, you don't get a red carpet, you get a turquoise one.
See that girl, what's that scene, singing the dancing queen.
This year's contest has been officially opened in the Swedish city of Malmö, ahead of what is a very busy week for the 37 representatives taking part. From the refined to the quirky.
Hello, my name is Windows 95
Tomorrow is the first semi-final, with half of the acts performing in the hopes of making it to the grand final on Saturday. The UK is part of the Big Five, the countries that contribute the most to the EBU, and they automatically get a place in the final. But for the first time, they will perform live in the semis. And it's fair to say that Ollie Alexander isn't doing things by halves. But this year's contest has an undertone of tension, with calls for some acts, including the UK, to boycott the event over the Israel-Gaza war.
I think it's really important that people are able to protest and people voice their opinions. Also myself, I think it's really important to not stay silent, and that's why I also collaborated with several artists this year to write a written letter, which is still on my Instagram.
Every day I'm losing my mind, holding on in this mysterious ride.
Israel is competing. Eden Golan's song Hurricane is a rewritten version of her first entry, October Rain, which was thought to reference the Hamas attacks of October the 7th. The tension means security is a real focus, but police in Malmö say they are ready.
We have a high security around the Israeli delegation, but we also have a high security for the other delegations and from the other countries. So I think it's important for us that all of them feel safe when they're coming to Malmö. So even if they're not from Israel, we try to keep them in a good mood and feel safe no matter what country they're from.
And they are definitely in a good mood. The permanent slogan of Eurovision is United by Music, something that's not lost on those taking part.
There should be demonstrations, people should voice their opinions, people should boycott. But for ours, in our sense, for us it means it boils down to those 3 minutes of music. Really, that's a completely non-intellectual experience. And when you don't think anymore, you just experience, you don't judge, you don't divide. That stuff goes away, and we need to foster those moments where we experience that together.
And with that, the Eurovision Song Contest 2024 is good to go. Poppy Jeffrey, BBC News.
Before we go, I'm going to bring you some baking news now from France, because it's restored its national pride, reclaiming the record for the world's longest baguette. And get a loaf of this. The creation measures more than 140 metres long. That's almost half the length of the Eiffel Tower. A group of bakers managed the feat in a competition in Paris. The previous record was held by Italians, despite, of course, the baguette being a classic French product, meaning the win marks a return to the status quo. The Guinness record adjudicator, Joanne Brent, was there to certify the achievement.
The final measurement is taken by the length of the baguette, and with a great, huge record to beat of 132.63 metres, I can confirm that this attempt has been successful.
That's it. Do stay with us here on BBC News.
Hello. So far, this bank holiday weekend has been a decidedly mixed affair. Some spells of warm sunshine, but also some really heavy downpours. We saw some flash flooding in parts of eastern Scotland during Sunday. You can see the showers and thunderstorms that erupted here through the day. Quite slow moving, actually. Not much wind to push these showers and storms along. One or two locations had close to half a month's worth of rain in the space of just a few hours. We are currently in the grip of this fairly weak and fairly flabby area of low pressure, so not much wind with that low to push the showers around. Where they do crop up again on Bank Holiday Monday, they will be heavy, quite slow moving, but with some spells of sunshine in between. This is how we start the day. The southern half of the UK seeing some areas of mist and fog, some sunny spells developing, but some rain across the southeast of England and East Anglia. Northern Ireland and Scotland keeping quite a lot of clouds, still with some hefty showers across some central and eastern parts of Scotland. By the middle of the afternoon, parts of East Anglia and the southeast seeing outbreaks of rain. Elsewhere, through the southwest of England into Wales, the Midlands and northern England, that mix of sunny spells and heavy, possibly thundery showers. Those showers quite slow moving, but the sunniest spots seeing highs of 19 or 20 degrees. More cloud for Northern Ireland, but largely dry. Still some hefty showers across southern and eastern Scotland. Further north and west, something drier and in places a little bit brighter. Now, as we head through Monday night, the showers should slowly but surely fade away in most locations. We'll keep some fairly large amounts of cloud, perhaps some mist patches here and there. Temperatures generally holding up between 6 and 10 degrees. Now, more showers in the forecast for Tuesday, but they shouldn't be as widespread, and on the whole, they shouldn't be quite as heavy. So mainly fine to start off. Some fairly large amounts of cloud, spells of sunshine too. Some of those showers getting going through the day, particularly across parts of England and Wales. But in the sunny spots, those temperatures again up to around 20 degrees Celsius. That is a sign of things to come, because as we head deeper into the week, high pressure builds a little more strongly. We'll still see frontal systems to the north of the UK, so a bit of rain at times, particularly across parts of Scotland. But further south, it stays mostly dry. Some spells of sunshine, temperatures climbing, seeing highs of around 21, 22, maybe 23 degrees.
Today we're looking at the state of British politics.
Asking, is technology ruining football?
Are we too obsessed with our phones?
Helen from Hull wants to know, how hot's the planet going to get?
And we'll explain why prices keep going up and up.
Also, Rach, did you know space has its own smell?
Really? What of? The world is fast moving and can be confusing.
So let's talk about it.
The future is already here.
All about AI changing our jobs.
From gadgets to gaming.
May the best driver win. It won't be me. Sustainability to AI.
Giant nets and AI robots to deal with plastic pollution.
The latest developments from the world of tech.
A floating solar farm, and it's a pretty impressive sight.
Wow! That went right through me!
Click, watch on BBC iPlayer.
Travelling can be so much more than a holiday.
It's about diving headfirst into new experiences.
And seeing the world with fresh eyes.
Where each destination tells a unique story.
And every encounter brings a new perspective.
Because all of these amazing places are made so much richer by the people who live in them.
So unleash your spirit of adventure.
And join us for a deeper understanding of the world.
The Travel Show.
Live from London, this is BBC News. High-stakes diplomacy. China's president has arrived in France with trade at the top of his agenda. A massive transport strike in Argentina is expected to disrupt almost all forms of transport. From London to Paris and beyond, we'll look back at the 3-decade history of trains connecting the UK to Europe. And putting your best foot forward, we'll visit the World Championships of Shoemaking and reveal the winner of the global competition. Hello there, I'm Tadhg Enright with your top business stories. Well, let's start with the crossover between diplomacy and economics, because the Chinese President Xi Jinping has kicked off his first trip to Europe for 5 years. He's arrived in France and will make stops in Serbia and Hungary later this week. The visit comes as some countries in Europe are taking action over what they perceive to be anti-competitive practices by China. Well, joining me now is Mabrouk Chetouin, who's head of global market strategy at Natixis Investment Managers. Thanks very much for joining us today, Mabrouk. Xi and his team have been publishing op-eds in French newspapers ahead of this visit, describing their relationship as a model of peaceful coexistence. What do you think President Xi wants out of this trip?
Good morning, and thank you for the invite. The purposes, sought by the administration, the Chinese administration, are twofold. The first one is normalizing the relationships with Europe, because Europe has launched a sequence of probes against China on some practices on trade, and also normalizing relationship on the political side with these Ukraine and Russia war. Europe, the European countries are let's say, quite upset by the fact that now some companies in China are supporting, Russian companies and the Russian war effort, and this is clearly a problem for European countries. And on the second thing is clearly, the huge and the massive trade imbalance between Europe and China, which is something that Emmanuel Macron, the president, the French president, has clearly pointed out as something that they need to deal with in the short term.
Sure. Mabrouk, as we were mentioning, and as you alluded to there, several European countries, in fact the European Union itself, is unhappy with things like the subsidies which China gives to its electric car makers. The European Commission is planning some kind of a response to that. How concerned do you think they are in China about potential EU tariffs, or are the Chinese cars sold here just a sideshow to the home market?
Well, this is a big issue for the Chinese EV sector, because we need to bear in mind that the European market is the biggest internal market and internal buyers for the Chinese EVs, electrical vehicles. Just one number. The Chinese production of electrical vehicles is about 38 million of units, while in the US they are only producing 10 million units, and in Europe 1.5. So you can see that there is this massive supply of electrical vehicles is something extremely important for the Chinese economy to sell this product and to avoid excess capacities that could affect negatively this the sector. Indeed, if there is, a tariff, an increase in tariffs, or a trade war, let's say, between Europe and China on this specific topic, it will clearly hit this sector, which is now a massive sector for the Chinese economy, and especially for the sector, the automotive sector. So clearly, the Chinese administration is concerned by this, let's say, this protectionism political, that the European countries, they want to implement. And we need also to have in mind something extremely important, what happened over the past, let's say decades, with the solar panels, the tariffs, the prices of the Chinese solar panel, they have completely destroyed this industry in Europe. And clearly, what the European countries want now, they want to avoid, and they want to avoid this thing happening now with the EV sector.
Mabrouk Chechouin, there we'll have to leave it. But thank you very much for joining us from Natixis Investment Managers. Now it's the start of a difficult week for Argentina's president, Javier Milei, who's facing continued public opposition to his controversial policies. A massive transport strike today is intended to disrupt almost all forms of transport. There'll be no trains, underground, planes or shipping taking place. There is another general strike planned for this Thursday as well, and these follow months of ongoing strikes over the country's economic performance. President Milei promised an economic reform package, taking a chainsaw to the previous government's policies as part of his shock treatment plan. Argentina is now facing one of the world's worst economic crises, with inflation and poverty continuing to rise. Well, live now to Mariano Machado, who's a principal Americas analyst at Verisk Maplecroft. Thanks for joining us today, Mariano. Let's talk about the transport strikes today, the general strike on Thursday. How serious and how disruptive are they going to be?
Thank you for having us. It's always a pleasure being here. So, as you said, Milei's policy reforms and his platform during the campaign time and still now resonate with vast segments of the population that are looking for meaningful change in Argentina. But that doesn't mean it's frictionless in terms of the interest and the different stakeholders that this, antagonize with. So in this particular case, what we're seeing is different types of strikes and demonstrations taking place. This week in particular, we're talking about union-driven type of demonstrations, and we expect those to be extremely disruptive, especially today. But on Thursday, when it comes to the second general strike that will take place in Milei's presidency, the fastest and the highest number for a sitting president in Argentina's democratic history, that will be an interesting process to observe, because depending on the degree of adherence from different unions and the population in general to the second strike, we might say that the tide is turning in terms of Milei's overall popularity.
So the tide is turning. Talk to us a little bit more about that. Obviously, sparking strikes on this scale does not necessarily mean that you haven't got the support of a majority of the public. They voted for him. Are they as in love with him as they were at election time?
Completely in agreement with what you're saying, and it's very important to make a difference here, because when we're talking about union-driven demos like the ones that are taking place today and on Thursday, those are the more kind of like structure, stakeholder-driven type of instances. And yes, that might not reflect popular support to the president. But a couple of days ago, we have a very unstructured demonstration in relation to the potential slashing of public university fundings, which for Argentina, it's a key identity trait, and perhaps, as of now, one of the sole paths into a better future, that was largely unorganized and organic when it comes to middle-class people just taking out to the streets, roughly 800,000 people across the country. So what we're seeing now is that where we expect this more organized type of protest to persist, these type of organic, unorganized protests are taking place as well. So this is exactly the tipping point we might be witnessing in terms of its popularity winding down.
The international community was aghast whenever he pledged as part of his election campaign to scrap the Argentinian central bank, to adopt the dollar as Argentina's currency. But he's not doing that now. How much more of these kind of radical proposals have been watered down or abandoned?
Well, in principle, we're seeing kind of like a two-phase government. One is kind of like the digital government that continues to pledge for these radical reforms and continues to speak that language. But on the other side, we have the analogical government, which is basically being forced to negotiate everything, either through Congress or in different instances. So the average of these two narratives is the thing we're seeing here. So in terms of abandon those, that might not be the case, but in terms of deploying and implementation, the pace is extremely slow compared to original expectations.
Okay, Mariano Machado from V-Risk Maplecroft, thanks for joining us today. Now, today marks 30 years of the opening of the Channel Tunnel linking England and France. It laid the tracks for the Eurostar train to shuttle passengers from London to Paris and beyond, and also the Eurotunnel vehicle and freight shuttles between Folkestone and Calais. Our transport correspondent Katie Austin has been taking a look back at the impact that the connections had and what's coming next.
A moment in history. 30 years ago today, Queen Elizabeth and French President Mitterrand officially opened the new connection between their two countries, which made an idea dreamed up centuries earlier a reality. Since the Queen made her journey through the Channel Tunnel, 480 million passengers have done the same. These days, 400 trains speed through it each day.
We're now going at about 120 kilometres per hour, which is roughly 75 miles per hour, and we're coming up to the middle of what is still the world's longest undersea tunnel.
Driver Martin has been here since the beginning.
People have this concept that it's just straight through to France, and it's totally not. The tunnel itself is up, down, round the corners and everything. It's no straight lines at all.
So you sort of know this tunnel like the back of your hand?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it's like a second home, really.
Building it was an exceptional feat of engineering.
There are actually 3 tunnels. The one I'm standing in right now with my high-vis and my hard hat isn't for trains. It's used for ventilation, access for maintenance and evacuating people in an emergency. We're now on the France side and the UK is 32 miles that way.
The tunnel carries a quarter of trade between the UK and the EU. Plus plenty of holidaymakers, whether on the Eurostar to Paris and beyond, or using the car shuttle to reach somewhere like Le Touquet, an hour's drive from Eurotunnel's Calais terminal.
Drove down to Folkestone, jumped on the tunnel, half an hour, Calais, 40 minutes down the coast. Perfect, nice and easy, no problems at all.
Have you done that before?
Yep, we've been to Le Touquet sort of 3 times, so we've always come through the tunnel.
Tunnel tourists help keep the wheels moving for small businesses, including this one.
I drive the little train. Lots of English people come at the weekend, in cars, in the shuttle. It's very good.
Plenty of Brits swing by the town's golf course.
Every year we've got 45,000 visitors, and basically 20,000 of those visitors are English people.
Charles thinks the shorter journey compared to ferries means a longer holiday.
Which is an extra round of golf, so that's more fun for them and more business for us.
The tunnel's financial journey hasn't always been smooth. It opened £2 billion over budget. At one point, the company which runs it nearly went bust. Predicted passenger numbers were never reached, but Eurotunnel became profitable. More recently, new challenges, the pandemic, and Brexit meant putting millions into new systems to deal with additional customs rules. What's next? Well, the boss here wants more trains running. That could include, for the first time, rivals to Eurostar running passenger services.
3 new companies have said that they want to launch new services within the 5 next years in the tunnel. We are very confident that within the 10 next years, there will be a doubling of the direct connection between London and Europe.
Before then, change is on the way for people crossing the channel. Eurotunnel is building an area to cope with the EU's new border system starting this October. We were the first to film the machine that passengers will use at Calais and Folkestone to register fingerprints and a photo instead of having their passport stamped.
The crossing time will be extended by 5 to maximum 7 minutes for each customers. And as we have extended the number of lanes, there will be no delay on the highway, nothing.
The cost of all this, £70 million. The tunnel's 30-year history has already proved eventful, and it's far from the end of the story. Katie Austin, BBC News.
In other business today, the acclaimed investor Warren Buffett has told shareholders in his Berkshire Hathaway fund that his successors are ready to take over his job. Speaking at its annual meeting, the 93-year-old announced that Vice Chairman Greg Abel and Ajit Jain will take over the company in future. Buffett also announced that his firm sold its entire stake in Paramount Global at a loss and cut its investment in Apple by 13%. The growth in demand for petrol could be cut in half this year, according to a series of analysts speaking to the financial agency Reuters, driven by the shift to electric cars, both in China and the US. The consultancy Wood Mackenzie predicts growth of 340,000 barrels a day compared with 700,000 last year. The International Energy Agency points out that China, which was once the world's driver of gasoline demand, will account for more than half of all electric vehicle sales this year. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Well, to Asia now, where people are bracing themselves for yet another hot summer. Last year was the hottest year ever, and 2024, well, the forecast is looking no better. Suranjana Tiwari is following the story from our Asia Business Hub in Singapore. Keeping cool there, but hopefully, Suranjana, for now. What does the future hold for us?
Just about keeping cool. Countries across Asia are on guard for more severe heat and rain, though. And experts are warning that the extreme weather could lead to a cocktail of health hazards for workers in this region. We now know, as you mentioned, that last year was the hottest on record. But based on what happened in April of this year, we saw similarly hot and dry weather for many countries in South and Southeast Asia, with temperatures topping 40 degrees Celsius in many cities and extreme weather as well. Now, schools in Bangladesh have now reopened after being closed. Thailand's capital, Bangkok, has been abnormally dry with barely any rainfall in April. And in China, we saw days of heavy rain battering parts of the southern province of Guangdong. That caused multiple deaths and forced more than 110,000 people from their homes. So why is this happening? Well, this is partly being fueled by the El Nino weather pattern, but scientists also say climate change is causing more frequent, severe and lengthy heat waves during the summer months rather. Many people, as I mentioned, have died across the region. And experts also say that the heat could exacerbate inequalities, widening a learning gap between developing and developed nations, with so many schools closed in the tropics as a result of the weather. Now, intense heat waves have also affected businesses, water shortages and frequent power cuts have hit the key apparel sector in Bangladesh, for example, which accounts for more than 80% of exports and supplies.
OK, Suranjana Tiwari in Singapore. Thank you very much. Now for something for the footwear lovers among you. This weekend, the World Championships of Shoemaking entered its 5th year here in London. The competition, aimed at preserving the fine art of handcrafted shoemaking, attracted 25 submissions from 12 different countries. And you can see the winning shoe on your screen now. The mission for the competitors was to make a leather-soled loafer of smooth, light brown calf leather. The jury consisted of some of the world's foremost bespoke shoemakers. And here's the winner of this year's competition. It is Ken Hishinuma, a Japanese shoemaker who runs the brand Kish the Work, which is based in Japan's Yamanashi prefecture. In fact, Japan featured pretty heavily in the competition, with the second place also going to a Japanese shoemaker. Well, unfortunately, Ken can't join us. He might be out clubbing in his cobbled creations right now. Let's instead go to the co-organiser of the competition. That's Jesper Ingvaldsson. And Jesper, I believe you have the winning shoe right there. You obviously bagged yourself a pair. Can you hold it up for us and explain to us what is so special about it?
These are literally some of the finest piece of footwear that you can find now and back in the day. And this is Ken Hishinuma's shoe, which has some very special features like this sort of non-wasted construction, or what you want to call it, with decorative stitching here, horseshoe shoe heel, built with very thin, fine layers, and very fine sole stitching and hand braided details on the upper, and a lot of complicated things done very neatly.
Yeah, talk to us more about that horseshoe heel, which is quite unique. I've never seen anything like that before. Is it comfortable? Is it designed to make a gentleman of smaller stature perhaps look a little bit taller?
Yeah, these shoes are not meant to be used, of course, but you can see this on footwear that people are wearing as well. And we've seen it. It's one of the winning shoes in a previous competition had this horseshoe heel, and you often see that type of thing comes popular in the future contests. But it's really a neat looking special thing, and yeah, this year it's relatively high as well.
So the shoes are not designed to be worn. Are they too special for that? Are they uncomfortable? Why is that?
The main thing with this competition is to push the craftsmanship. And like 100 years ago, shoemaking contests were a very common thing. It's something that a lot of shoemakers participated in. And if you go to a shoe museum today, some of the best shoes that you see there, they were made for the competitions. And we sort of wanted to bring that back with the World Championships of Shoemaking and push the craftsmanship, push the shoemakers to make some amazing stuff that they might not do for their customer shoes, and also generate interest for the craft. That's why we have it part of this Super Trunk Show event. The top 3 shoes will go on a world tour to be showcased for show lovers and so on. Yeah.
So talk to us more about the craft and about why you set up the competition. Why do you think the old shoemaking competitions of the bygone age fell by the wayside, got a bit worn out?
This type of craft, it's always existed, but of course, handmade shoes and bespoke shoes were a much bigger thing, like 100 years ago and back further. Nowadays, it's more mass-produced shoes, so it's more of a luxury thing. But in recent years, especially with the internet era, more and more people are sort of appreciating this craft. The shoes are basically made with the same techniques used, like 100, 150 years ago for the best shoes. It's handmade, very fine craftsmanship. And nowadays, it's... you want to make display shoes and all that, where you push yourself a bit, but without the contests, you don't take it to the next level, and that's what we wanted to do.
So you're obviously hoping to reinvigorate the craft of shoemaking. I note you had 25 entrants, not a massive number. I mean, how would you describe, the state of the craft right now? How many people are out there right now creating these kind of creations? And do you think there could be more if more attention were paid to it?
Yeah, that's what we hope for. There are thousands of great shoemakers around the world. And so this is sort of the cream of the crop that we see at the shoemaking contest, especially at the highest positions. But everything needs to be done to sort of promote this. We need this type of contest. We have websites, YouTube channels, Instagram, and all that type of thing that helps. And often people who spend the money to acquire a pair of bespoke shoes or other fine handmade shoes, they really appreciate it and they come back for it for sure.
Right now we're looking at pictures of the, I think what's called the patina aspect of the competition. That's people putting unique painted creations onto the shoes. Tell us more about that craft and whether those shoes will ever get worn.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is a quite common thing for also for like a bit more basic Goodyear welted shoes or so on. This is the winning shoe of the World Championship of Shoe Patina, made by Morgan Levesque from France, who we had the Shoe Shine World Championships and Shoe Patina and World Shoemaking Championships at the same day there. But it's essentially painting shoes, but accentuating the shape of the shoes, the pattern, and so on. So here it's very advanced techniques with these strokes going from dark to very light colored, complicated things to make this neatly, so to speak.
And what do these shoes cost?
For the patina shoes, they are regular, like ready-to-wear shoes for about 250, 300 pounds. But
That's
if you would look at these shoes, the bespoke shoes cost around maybe £4,000.
4,000. Jesper, unfortunately,
yeah.
time is against us, so we have to leave it there with your expensive shoes. But thank you very much for joining us here on BBC News. More coming up at the top of the hour.
Hello. So far, this bank holiday weekend has been a decidedly mixed affair. Some spells of warm sunshine, but also some really heavy downpours. We saw some flash flooding in parts of eastern Scotland during Sunday. You can see the showers and thunderstorms that erupted here through the day. Quite slow moving, actually. Not much wind to push these showers and storms along. One or two locations had close to half a month's worth of rain in the space of just a few hours. We are currently in the grip of this fairly weak and fairly flabby area of low pressure, so not much wind with that low to push the showers around. Where they do crop up again on Bank Holiday Monday, they will be heavy, quite slow moving, but with some spells of sunshine in between. This is how we start the day. The southern half of the UK seeing some areas of mist and fog, some sunny spells developing, but some rain across the southeast of England and East Anglia. Northern Ireland and Scotland keeping quite a lot of clouds, still with some hefty showers across some central and eastern parts of Scotland. By the middle of the afternoon, parts of East Anglia and the southeast seeing outbreaks of rain. Elsewhere, through the southwest of England into Wales, the Midlands and northern England, that mix of sunny spells and heavy, possibly thundery showers. Those showers quite slow moving, but the sunniest spots seeing highs of 19 or 20 degrees. More cloud for Northern Ireland, but largely dry. Still some hefty showers across southern and eastern Scotland. Further north and west, something drier and in places a little bit brighter. Now, as we head through Monday night, the showers should slowly but surely fade away in most locations. We'll keep some fairly large amounts of cloud, perhaps some mist patches here and there. Temperatures generally holding up between 6 and 10 degrees. Now, more showers in the forecast for Tuesday, but they shouldn't be as widespread, and on the whole, they shouldn't be quite as heavy. So mainly fine to start off. Some fairly large amounts of cloud, spells of sunshine too. Some of those showers getting going through the day, particularly across parts of England and Wales. But in the sunny spots, those temperatures again up to around 20 degrees Celsius. That is a sign of things to come, because as we head deeper into the week, high pressure builds a little more strongly. We'll still see frontal systems to the north of the UK, so a bit of rain at times, particularly across parts of Scotland. But further south, it stays mostly dry. Some spells of sunshine, temperatures climbing, seeing highs of around 21, 22, maybe 23 degrees.
Morning. Come and have a seat. Now, of course, I'm not going to go easy on you. There are some really big questions we've got to try and get answers to this morning. But I'll be fair, and we just want to hear what you've got to say. So, shall we get on with it?
We're rolling.
Here we go. Join me to hear from the biggest names inside and outside politics.
Sunday with Laura Koonsberg. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
Be prepared this bank holiday. Whatever the weather. Check on the BBC Weather app.
Good morning, welcome to Breakfast with John Kay and Nina Warhurst.
Hello, it's 6 o'clock. Here are our headlines this morning. And John Swinney is expected to be confirmed as the new leader of the Scottish National Party later, after a potential challenger pulled out of the race.
Prime Minister Rishi Sunak admits last week's local elections were bitterly disappointing for the Conservative, but says the party can still come together and make progress.
Gives a job. Go on, gives it. Go.
Tributes are being paid to the actor Bernard Hill, who has died at the age of 79.
Good morning. After 110 attempts, Lando Norris is a Formula One race winner. The British driver takes the checkered flag at a dramatic Miami Grand Prix on a day to remember for McLaren.
And good morning. We'll see some spells of warm sunshine around today, but also plenty of heavy downpours and some thunderstorms too. They'll have all your bank holiday weather details throughout the programme.
It's Bank Holiday Monday, the 6th of May. Our main story, John Swinney is expected to be confirmed as the next leader of the Scottish National Party after his last potential competitor pulled out.
It means Mr Swinney is also the most likely candidate to replace Humza Yousaf as Scotland's First Minister. Our reporter Ben Phillip has the latest.
As you can tell, I'm sad that my time as First Minister is ending. But I am so grateful, I'm so blessed for having the opportunity that are afforded to so few to lead my country.
A week is a long time in politics. Last Monday, an emotional Humza Yousaf resigned, leaving the SNP looking for a new leader and Scotland a new First Minister. Focus quickly turned to who would replace him. In the frame, John Swinney and Kate Forbes.
I want to unite the SNP and unite Scotland for independence.
Shortly after Mr Swinney entered the contest, Ms Forbes said she wouldn't stand.
Technically, the deadline for nominations is at midday, and as the only current contender and with the clock running down, it was widely expected that John Swinney would become the next SNP party leader and country's 7th First Minister unopposed. That was until a last-minute twist over the weekend.
SNP activist Graham McCormick was hoping to lodge a challenge for the leadership position. It's thought he collected signatures at a pro-independence march in Glasgow at the weekend. But no sooner had the bid launched, it was over. In a statement late last night, Mr McCormick said he'd met the nominations threshold to enter the contest, adding that after a lengthy and fruitful conversation with John Swinney, they had agreed on the challenges which the SNP, Scottish Government and people face. He described it as a fresh start to deliver Scottish independence. He said, I have therefore concluded that I shall not proceed with my nomination for party leader, throwing his support behind John Swinney. Over the weekend, Mr Swinney insisted he was the right man for the job.
I feel physically and mentally ready to become the leader of the SNP and the First Minister of Scotland. And I will give it absolutely everything I have in me to make sure that my party succeeds and my country succeeds.
Events could move quickly again this week. With the path now clear, it's all but certain that John Swinney will be in the top job in the coming days. Ben Phillip, BBC News.
We shall see. John has a roundup of the day's other news. John.
Thank you, Nina. Yeah, more on the impact of the local elections, because the Prime Minister has said it was bitterly disappointing to have lost Andy Street as the Mayor of the West Midlands, along with almost 500 Conservative councillors across England. Rishi Sunak has told today's Times newspaper that he's determined his party will now come together and show people they are delivering. Here's our political correspondent, Helen Catt.
In the calm after the elections, there's a lot for the Prime Minister to think about. Rishi Sunak appears safe from a challenge from his own MPs, despite a very bad set of election results for the Conservatives. Mr Sunak told The Times he was determined that his party